So I am incredibly honored to be here with you today to help enhance the understanding of poverty and our fellow human beings who live in it, and to bring back the humanity of the people who are fighting poverty on a daily basis. Because what's happened in our country is we've dehumanized them. We don't really see them as people. I was on a plane the other day, and this woman saw my book. And my book is a great conversation piece because it has the word poverty on it. And everyone has thoughts about poverty as soon as you say the word. And she looked at my book and she said, "Oh, those people, they don't have any love in their lives. They never have any fun." And I said, "Whoa, I come from poverty, and we have a lot of love, and we have a lot of fun. We just ain't got no money." So I have been privileged to work with the court systems, and it was interesting when I first started working in the justice system. I was totally intimidated by judges, totally intimidated by lawyers, totally, in my world, it's sort of like police officers. Still today when I train police officers, I have to psych myself out. You're legal, nothing they can do, they can't take anybody away, because that was the programming I got. So this is an honor for me, and to have you and the partners here willing to really focus on how do we create tools for attorneys to better communicate and create shared meaning, see follow through, and help people to have success in the court system and truly experience equal justice. That's kind of the planet I want to live on. So this is a great honor for me. But we do have some things in the way, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And you've heard a little bit about some of the barriers to equal justice. And in doing this project, I looked into some of the current barriers. Raise your hand if you know we have a justice system that works fairly well for people who have. And looks a little different for people who don't. So that's a big issue in terms of equal justice or equity in the justice system or accessing attorneys. You see the numbers here, one legal aid attorney available for 6,415 low-income people. And courts, I've been watching a lot of video presentations of judges talking about so many people coming into the court system with no representation. And the study's pretty clear that without representation, your chances of success really fall. I mean, seriously, you go to law school for a reason, right? It's like people say, well, you don't need school to teach. Well, you do learn certainly some strategies for teaching and learning when you become a teacher. You learn some strategies for being an attorney. You wouldn't go into surgery without a surgeon. Why would you go into a courtroom without an attorney? And then you look at some of the time spent if you're lucky enough to get an attorney. I found some of these statistics. 7 minutes in New Orleans, Detroit, 32 minutes. What kind of representation is that? In Florida, there were some police officers who were really amazing and pioneering in that they saw the injustices where the legal aid attorneys had no resources to investigate. They were so overloaded in their cases. They had no opportunities to go out and really find out what was going on. So these police officers left the police force because they were seeing people fall through the cracks in the justice system, and they formed an investigative nonprofit team to support legal aid attorneys. I thought that's one I think is really a hopeful situation where you've got community partners supporting legal aid attorneys who are so incredibly overwhelmed. You look at these studies, and this is a District of Columbia study showing just incredible numbers of people entering the courtroom. And I know, if my family entered the courtroom, which they do often, without representation, I feel sorry for the judge because they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know the protocols, they don't know the words to use. So it's going to tie up the courts even more because of their lack of information and lack of ability to really tap into that system. So in this project, what we were hoping to do is really provide a foundational understanding of poverty, to move away from the stereotypes. When I was at University of Portland, age 28, working on my bachelor's degree, I got my GED at 26 and ended up at University of Portland. I arrived there believing that the people who were making it didn't care about the people who weren't. Anybody here ever represented someone in poverty who said no one cares about people like us? That's, if you listen to youth and adults in poverty, that's one of the first things you'll hear. And poverty life experiences teach you that. I remember watching my mom and dad go into a helping organization, and there would be plastic or glass between them and the people. And I'd be thinking as a kid, why don't you talk to them face to face and like get to know our names? But nobody knows your name when you're in poverty. Your client, recipient, you just don't get a name. You're quite invisible. So watching at 7th grade, I remember telling a teacher, I don't want to go outside. They fight out there. And the teacher said, there's nothing I can do. You need to go outside. I have work to do. So I go outside. I get beat up. Handfuls of my hair falling out of my head. No one cares. So poverty, lived experiences teach you that. And the other variable that is so important to understand is that we're segregated in America. Raise your hand if you know that middle-class people spend time with middle-class people. So if you're in the war zone of poverty, who are you hanging out with? Other people who are in a similar situation, or as I say, out of salt and butter too. There's nobody to ask, what does that word mean? Nobody to ask, what else might I do? You call somebody up even just to try to get empathy. My car got towed. Me too. You know, there's nobody to call. You don't have phone numbers of anyone with a title. So you're just in this isolation where everyone is in crisis. So what I learned at University of Portland, because it was really my first time being around people who were making it, being out of the segregation of poverty, the isolation of poverty. And University of Portland's a really privileged school. It's sister to Notre Dame. So I'm around even more privileged people. And I'm watching them do caring behaviors. They are volunteering at soup kitchens, donating their time, volunteering to help people. And I'm thinking, this is not my lived experience. This is not what I knew growing up for 28 years in poverty. And so I'm puzzled by, it looks like they care. Then I'm thinking, well, if they care, why aren't they doing something? Why would you allow people to live in crisis like this in your own community? So I started talking to people about poverty, and it became so clear really quickly. And this was a pivotal moment in my life. They cared. I learned that my fellow human beings really care about the people who live in crisis of poverty. How many of you care about the people in your community who are fighting poverty on a daily basis? I have yet to ever have a helping professional raise their hand and say, I don't care. We care. We care. So Mother Teresa says that to believe your fellow human beings don't care about you is worse than hunger. And I believe that. I'm convinced of that from a personal perspective, because it was so amazingly enlightening and lifting to learn that, wow, they really care. And as I began talking to people about poverty, I learned so quickly, even though they cared, they didn't have a clue. They could no more describe my life in generational migrant labor poverty than I could describe middle-class norms, middle-class lived experiences, middle-class vocabulary. We were so segregated, our lives so very different, same species, but different contexts.